What's up, guys? Bob here for Tuesday Night Live. We are a weekly educational streaming show for everyone working in the red suit Claus industry. We host live interviews with professional Santas and Mrs. Clauses, as well as vendors who supply us with all the goods and props we need to make our portrayal the best. We also have on our show throughout the year those hiring agents and replacement for placement who place us for employment. To our subscribers as well as our loyal viewers and contributors, thank you. Our goal is and always has been to bring all of this experienced and talented ladies to the show tonight. Uh, just remember that this is always free, no cost to you. And tonight's show is the many faces of Mrs. Claus. And we have a lineup of very experienced and talented ladies to share their knowledge. Why? Because the more we share, the better we all become. The opening of tonight's show is brought to you by SatBob's Professional Technical Training School for Christmas Entertainers. The legend lives on. This is Tuesday Night Live. All right, now let's get started with this portion of the show and introduce the man who could even make a person that is actually afraid to express any emotion bust a gut laughing at his insane humor. He is known for those daily calls with his jokes or two of the day and sends out many messages and text videos just because he can. Ladies and gentlemen, show my co-host love with warm welcome. Here's Spangle. Yes, that guy.
Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. Oh, man, I'll tell you what, we've shared this across so many platforms today because this is a show you do not want to miss. So sit back, get your popcorn, get your cookies and milk, and let's get going.
That's right. We can't wait to get this one rolling. Here's a thought though. Check us out on YouTube. The Tuesday Night Live Show 1225. Go over and show to the YouTube and look at some of the past shows that we've had. They're all cataloged over there for your viewing pleasure at your convenience. So, and when you got a moment, don't have anything to do, go check out the Bob Randall and Company Live preview show and the Tuesday Night Live Show over on YouTube. The first half of the Tuesday Night Live Show is brought to you by School of Santas 2024, hosted by Spangle in the picturesque Ozark Mountains, Branson, Missouri, where fun and education meet.
Noah Lott reporting for TNL Chatterbox News. This year's School of Santas will be held July 18th through the 21st in beautiful, picturesque Branson, Missouri, right in the heart of the Ozark Mountains. If you've been before, then you know all about the 4 days of festivities that School of Santas is best known for. Each year the host facility, American by Wyndham, Branson and Conference Center is home to over 100 Clauses for the weekend and is centrally located in the middle of everything Branson. If you have never attended SOS, well, bless your heart, you are missing out on one of the Claus community's premier educational opportunities. For more information on price and to ensure your place at the next School of Santas, contact Tanya Lay at Branson Ticket and Travel today at 800-432-4202. Again, that's 800-432-4202 and get registered today. I'm Noah Lott reporting. Now back over to you guys in the TNL studio.
All right, Spangle. It's just one more week till we do the drawing, right?
Oh, my goodness. Huh? And we're ready, aren't we?
We are. We're just a little over 6 weeks out to Branson, starting to really gear up for that. Get excited. I know you've got a lot of stuff taking place. You have, planning and starting to bring everything together. And of course, Scott and myself and a few others will show up Monday, Tuesday, and help set things up and get the show on the road. I'm excited for this year. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a good time, and Do you have any seats left?
Well, we might be able to crowd you in there 1 or 2 spots. But listen, you guys aren't showing up Monday or Tuesday. You guys are showing up Monday.
Well, I'm saying I know me and Scott's coming in on Monday. I'm not sure if any of the other help will be in until Tuesday. So anyway, it's trivia time, and of course we've had the trivia up on the screen now for a couple of moments. Let everyone kind of get a read over that real quick and see what this week is. There's only 2 answers. 2. That's it. Just 2. So go ahead and read it, and let's see how many
All
folks
right.
can
What
get.
year was the Christmas legend published with the first ever mention of Santa Claus's wife to appear in print? It was part of a collection of 29 short stories written by a Philadelphia missionary named blank blank. And what year? Need the author and the year.
Author and the year. That's correct. That's a fairly simple one. We've got so much going on tonight. We didn't want to make it too hard. We want folks to be able to sit back, as you said, relax, kick your feet up, and enjoy this show, because this show is going to be phenomenal.
With this being the many faces of Mrs. Claus, do you remember last year when we went to the Acrobats?
Yes.
Remember that guy? Different face, different face, different face.
For me, that was the highlight of the show. I still, to this day, cannot figure out how he does that, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of like what we're doing tonight, the many faces of Mrs. Claus.
All right. So you ready to get started?
We're ready.
All
so
right.
let's kick tonight's show off with many faces of Mrs. Claus by introducing our featured co-host of the night for this TNL production special presentation. She spends her winters with her hubby, Kim, at their Southern Division home in Cave Creek, Arizona. But they spend their summers in the upper peninsula of Michigan, enjoying the best of both worlds, cool summers and warm winters. A very special thank you to her for taking the reins of the sleigh this week and organizing and scripting most of the portions of tonight's show. Please give tonight's featured co-host the warmest of all welcomes, Miss Anna Claus, our friend Deanna Golden. Blah, blah, blah.
Wow. Who's that? That's awesome. Thank you. What an incredibly warm welcome. And yes, it is a very cool. So while it's the end of May in the Upper Peninsula,
it's so cold, her computer looks like it might have froze for a minute. Hey, anyways, Bob, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, good.
Freeze?
Hey, okay.
There she is.
There I am. Did I just freeze?
It was so cold you froze.
Oh my gosh, because it's cold here. I'm so sorry. Anyway, so that's what the Upper Peninsula is like. You never know what you're going to get from one day to the next. So hopefully you can hear me and I'm not all pixelated and freezing. So thank you.
Thank you again for helping out this week with this show. Spankla and I are just kind of along for the ride. We're going to open the show up. We'll let you know when it's halftime, and then we'll close the show out once you get through with the ladies. So great to have you here. Great to have you back. And you have brought some friends of ours to the party. So let's just go ahead and get going here.
Let's jump in. So here's how I want to start this. So the landscape of the Christmas community continues to change for the ladies. From Mrs. Claus staying at the North Pole to bake cookies, to her creating her own identity, both with Santa and on her own, the ladies are shining examples of spreading joy to everyone who loves Christmas. And just like all women, Mrs. Claus is simple, complex, sophisticated, playful, smart, brave, willing to try new things, and still discovering her many, many hidden talents. Mrs. Claus is anything but one-dimensional. In fact, there are many faces of Mrs. Claus, and tonight I'm honored to be among a few of these spectacular ladies who wear more than one hat. So tonight, we'll look at the many faces of Mrs. Claus. And so we're going to bring on the face of education, with Shawn White. So Shawn's going to come into the studio. Thank you, Shawn. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Deanna.
We're also going to be looking at the face of leadership with Jocelyn Whitney. And here comes Jocelyn from Tulsa.
Hello.
Hi, Jocelyn. We're going to be taking a look at the face of community service with Cam Breitenbach out of Colorado. There's Cam, Miss Cammy Claus. We're going to look at the many faces of the many faces with Nancy Jean Gray from Las Vegas.
Hi. Hello.
And then we're also going to have an amazing look at the face of business with Natasha Spencer Coley out of Florida. Amazing ladies. If you have not had a chance to meet them, you're in for a treat. So we're going to begin with Shawn and the face of education. So Mrs. Claus vintage. She's a beacon of the holiday spirit across Michigan and Ohio. Her journey began on the community theater stages, where she honed her skills in engaging storytelling and character portrayal. Her dedication to the role is evident in her attention to detail, from the twinkle in her eye to the hem of her dress, ensuring every encounter feels like stepping into a living storybook. But what truly sets her apart is her versatility. Working alongside Santas or solo, her talents shine equally bright, proving that the spirit of Christmas lives in the stories we share and the connections we make. Thank you, Shawn, for being a part of this amazing evening.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So starting off, Shawn, when did you become Mrs. Claus?
Well, I will tell you the exact moment that I knew something magical was happening is I was on stage behind a curtain, waiting for the curtain to rise up. And there was, I don't know, at least 50 children around me and some adults. And I looked around and we were all waiting for the curtain to go up. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a way I can continue this in life with children. And that was the magical moment that I knew. I didn't know what it would be, but later when I was asked to be Mrs. Claus for a small town, it came together, and I knew that I had a sign for it. So
we all have that moment where we just know.
Yes,
we just know, and there's no going back, is there?
And you never forget those moments either, ever.
You always forget that first. Never forget that first child. Okay.
No.
So of all the places, because you're on the younger side of the Claus landscape, and so of all the places that you could figure out how to contribute more and to bring your talents into the Claus community, why did you pick education? And what does that look like? What are you doing with education? But why that?
Well, number one, we're all better together, as we say in Michigan at MAPS. And after the last couple of years of really having a support group with some of the Santa Clauses from different areas and Mrs. Clauses, during the season when we most needed it, I realized we all need to be there for each other. It's not just for myself to be doing this, because we're bringing magic to all the children. And the more we're helping each other, the better we're going to be. So I started doing interviews on some different shows, and Ed Taylor reached out to me, and I started on Worldwide Santa Claus Network with him. He's a wonderful man, and I really like the direction that is going. And on the other side of this, my background is in education leadership. I was on the school board president for many years, elected, the whole works. So I really believe in education. And when I became Mrs. Claus, that was one of the things that I looked for first thing. When I knew I wanted to be more, I wanted to be professional, I wanted to really know what I was doing and know the stories. And as much as I could find out, I looked for education, found MAPS in our state. I didn't know that even existed. So everything I do is a part of giving back and making us all better.
Mhm.
So, and that's where it all kind of came from. And I do believe in education. I have a bachelor's degree. Luckily, my children are all educated, and it just serves a good purpose in the world.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Shawn. So when you think about the kinds of education focused on the ladies, because we talk a lot about the history of the Christmas schools, and traditionally called the Santa schools, that were developed for Santas, and over time there's been more and more offerings for the ladies. So what is it that you see that the ladies need that is different than what the gentlemen need? And what kind of programs are you putting together and offering for the ladies and for the gentlemen?
And for the gentlemen, yeah, I like just as much working with the Santa Clauses and being and helping them also. I think because I do a lot of solo work, and I find my own jobs, and I do all the business side of everything, I think that we all need all of it personally. And it's hard to draw a line between that. I think, of course, there's different kinds of ways to learn, and people look at learning differently. And those are the things that we need to tap into to help the community feel comfortable in learning. So there's, visual, there's all kinds of ways to learn. And that's something that I want to go deeper into. I know just by going in February to San Antonio and listening to you guys and doing the improv and stuff, that was huge. That was helpful in so many different ways, because you guys touched on different ways we could learn, and we did, and it worked. So
Mhm.
I want that to keep growing in our community. And the business classes are just as important, the marketing, to everyone. I don't feel like there's any, and I would like to see more Santa Clauses doing some of the crafts with the children and things like that. So both ways. And I hope that happens. So
Fantastic. So you're talking about some business classes and the marketing kinds of classes. What other kind of topics are you addressing? And is it, you're talking about including the Santas for doing crafts and hands-on kinds of activities. But what is there a different approach that you're taking for teaching the ladies than what might be presented to the Santas? And what about elves?
oh, elves, yeah, I love, yeah. Okay, part of this all, and it doesn't matter if you're a Santa Claus, an elf, you're a tooth fairy, you're whatever, you have to develop your character. So we all start from the beginning together, and we should all have our own stories. And I think that some of that has been left out for the women. I think they just become Santa Claus's sidekick. So that's one thing that I think with learning that we can help more with the Mrs. Clauses is their own identity, empowerment of them.
Mm-hmm.
And but it should all be together too, because I work with Santas. Even when I'm not working with Santa, I'm telling the same stories to the children, because it is about Santa. So to separate us too much, I think is not always a good thing either.
Because it's all about being a team.
A team, yeah. No matter if I'm working solo or not.
Yes, exactly. So the last question that I'll ask for you now, and then we'll move on, and then we'll have everyone together, for some joint questions and take questions from the audience a bit later. But since education, you says we're all better together.
Yes.
So that means each of us is a teacher, each of us is a student. So for everyone who's listening, how can those who, I'm not going to stand in front of a group and teach what I know, but I have things that work for me. How can we encourage people to teach at a local level, to be a mentor, to continue to learn? What advice do you have for all of the Clauses out there to continue learning as well as teaching?
I think if they're not comfortable with being in front of a crowd, that's fine, because not everybody is, and not everybody's a leader. So not everybody's going to want to teach, because there's followers and there's leaders. I think that a key is to get a nice support group of people around you that you can really call on, share your ideas with them, mentor with others, most definitely. And if you have ideas, tell somebody, call one of us up, whoever's watching this, and tell us your ideas, run it by us. Tell us to add it into something that you think we're doing, we're doing in a class or something. If you don't want to be there, or something you've been doing for 30, 40 years, please share it with us so we can keep your traditions going too. So I think I just know that not everybody's a leader. So, some of us.
We all have something to share. And I think that's the encouragement, right, is that whether you've been doing this for a week, a year, a decade, the perspective, and we talk about this as well, the perspective of having those fresh eyes, those who have been doing Claus for years and years and years, learn from the newer folks. And, just as much. So that's a great. Thank you, Shawn, for those wise words. We're going to, the face of education is in good hands with Shawn White.
Thank you.
So let's take a look at the face of leadership and spend a couple minutes with Jocelyn Whitney.
Hello.
So Jocelyn, hello. So Jocelyn, if you don't know Jocelyn, she and Santa Bob Bullock live in Tulsa. They just celebrated their 29th wedding anniversary. Yeah. He knew she had been a performer for many years in her younger days, and they both loved Christmas. Enough said. When he was recruited to do Santa, he immediately connected with others locally, and the state chapter was organized. Jocelyn knew she wanted to portray Mrs. C, but her work at the time was too demanding. So after she retired in 2017, they had their first joint event just 3 weeks later. She knew many of the local couples through casual meetings in their home. She joined Oklahoma Santas, and her husband, Bob, became the first vice president. Josie Claus was a college administrator, carried over that focus on lifelong learning. She's a graduate of Santa Nana's Holiday University and all 3 levels of CPW. Jocelyn represents the face of leadership as the first woman elected as the president of the Oklahoma Santas chapter. Thank you, Jocelyn, for being a part of this.
Thank you, Deanna, for asking me to be a part of this. This is funny because it's the perfect segue from the educational to the leadership. And I would put one caveat to Shawn about leadership. I think every one of us can lead. We just do it very differently. Sometimes we lead through a conversation. Sometimes we lead through sharing a piece of literature that or some material that we've read. There's leading from right there. There's leading from a kind of underneath. So there's so many different ways. I was comfortable with leading, but I wasn't necessarily all that comfortable at the thought of leading the Oklahoma Santas group. So the group had really just formed when I was still working. And so they've been going for about 5 years, maybe a little bit less than that, about 4 years, when we'd had 2 presidents, the first of whom took dreadfully ill halfway through his tenure. And so the group had kind of gotten off to a little bit of a bumpy start. And so we were meeting, the pandemic hit. People were just, I don't know if you remember, a little bit stressed about performing, about audience, about are we going to get to continue doing what we're doing? And we were all only meeting on Zoom. Nobody was in a particularly jolly mood about any of it. And we were having some challenges getting the group off the ground because no one really was stepping up on a regular basis to say, I'll take my turn as president now. And so somebody had asked me about it beforehand, and I was like, no, I really need to see that this group is really going to be intact before I, jump in there to do anything, because I was really still quite a bit of a newcomer. But I knew all of the guys. I knew all of the guys and the women in the group. And I had already hosted, I think it was right after I'd hosted Santa Ana University in Tulsa, and really talked to Deanna about her leadership role in iBurbs. And I thought about that for a while, but realized, no, the last thing I really wanted was, if I was going to do leadership, the last thing I wanted was to do it remotely. Again, I really wanted that personal contact with people, because that's just who I am. I want to look you in the eye. I want to touch you. Natasha knows I want to hug you. I want to see your pretty clothes that you're wearing. Love it. So my moment when I became, somebody gave when they became Mrs. Claus, when I became a leader, I guess, was when I was watching the Biden inauguration, and Miss Amanda Gorman gave that incredible speech, her poem about being what you want to see in this world. And I decided at that point, it might have been a slightly celebratory, I had a little sip of champagne, but I texted our current president and said, okay, I'll run for president. And he actually, in all fairness, he did call me back the next day and said, I understand you were quite, happy. You can back out of this if you want. And I said, no, this, I really do mean this. I want to give this a try. And so I did become 6 months later the next president of Oklahoma Santas. And Deanna, I think I skipped your question part and just went straight on into it.
You just answered it, because that was the first question was going to be what drew you to it, and you just explained it beautifully. And I think it's interesting that inspiration for what we do comes from the most unexpected places. It really does. And so you just have to realize it and be open to it and hear it, the little tickle in the ear, and just say, wait a minute, I think I need to do something with this. So no, thank you. That was a perfect opening. So you were the first woman, elected. And then, so during your tenure as the president, tell us about the greatest challenge, the greatest accomplishment, how you approached that challenge, how it turned out, and how long you served.
Well, I served for 2 years. That's how our group works. And probably the greatest, it wasn't my accomplishment, but I'm going to say it, just me saying I self-nominating for this. Up until then, almost exclusively, all of our officers had been men, had been Santas in the group. When I put my name out there, 2 other women in the group put in their names for secretary and for treasurer. And I was thrilled about that. And that has continued now that we have 5 officers altogether. So we either have 2 men and 3 women, or 3 men and 2 women always on there. So that's how it's gone since then. But then I will say that I really looked at it since we were still a fairly new group. I think my greatest success, what I'm most proud of, I really brought in the emphasis on just kind of tightening up the administrative duties and making it easy, leaving kind of a template for having an agenda for the meeting, being sure that we had, a treasurer's report every meeting, and kind of helped the group refine our purpose, really tried to bring education. And we brought we had already worked and brought Santa Nana, but we brought Santa True back for the third during my tenure for the final thing. I was very thrilled that we were able to do that. And I think I set that example. We tend to now still have an educational component, whether it's a game or a skill, something that we're learning pretty much at each meeting that we do. The biggest challenge, I think I wrote something down here. The biggest ones, right after I took office, we lost two of our Santas, passed away that year, and they were close friends, and they were really great people. And it really was challenging because we were trying to help. They were both married. They both had partners who were also in the group. So trying to help it made me sad because both of these women retired from any participation they had in being Christmas performers. But we helped them kind of get the closure of distributing their Santa's, uniforms and things. So it was just a very somber year in that. When it came to seriously working with any of the people in the group, I think I grew up with brothers and sisters. I grew up kind of looking like this Brady Bunch, box. We had 6 kids and 2 parents. So I had met and got to know so many of the guys in advance and the women that everybody was kind of like my brothers and sisters. And I just kind of, framed that the way I'd frame faculty meetings when I was holding a faculty meeting, at the college when I was working there. And yes, we know there are some egos. There are some people who just want to be there strictly to eat and drink. Everybody has a story, but we really I just use those kind of common sense. We have an agenda. Thank you for your input. We're going to follow the agenda, and we'll have time for, getting into those stories a little bit later on. So that challenge turned into, really one of the things I was very proud of. And that was really sort of setting up maybe a bit. And it's not like we didn't have an order before, but it just wasn't quite as
you tightened it up,
perhaps as structured as I think what I brought to that.
Well, that's fantastic, Jocelyn, because it's, if you added that tightness and that structure, you paved the way for your successor to just and make it easy for that. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So and there was somebody who immediately volunteered to be a successor when I was coming up for completion. I was thrilled.
Yes, because it's not easy for those of us who have stepped into roles that have been, whether they're the first time roles or that they're you're filling a replacement role. That transition, the smoother it can be, the better it is for the people that you serve. So if you had a piece of advice for anyone out there, ladies or gentlemen, who have considered stepping into a leadership role, but not sure. And as you said, we're all leaders in some fashion. What kind of advice or encouragement would you give to people who are thinking about dipping their red boots into the sea of red?
I'd say find some way to serve that is comfortable for you. I find the our local iBurbs chapter to be very, very, very meaningful. And I'm sometimes surprised to realize that a lot of the Mrs. Clauses that I interact with online or on Facebook aren't chapter members of anything. And I think having that community has to be kind of the primary focus. Some kind of a community of other performers, of other Christmas performers. And then you take a role in that, whether you are hosting a Zoom meeting, whether you're saying, be the meeting organizer, if that's what your skill is, say, hey, let's all get together locally here and just, visit at a coffee shop. Let's go get coffee and visit about how, exchange ideas, think about how things are doing. Group treasurer is always a good thing if it's somebody who has any kind of bookkeeping experience, and they're lower key things. Because I do agree, as much as I don't understand. I think because of growing up with 6 kids in the family, I never had a problem making myself heard. Okay. But not everyone, I understand, not everyone is comfortable getting up and doing that. But there are different ways of leading. There are ways to lead, behind the scenes, however you need to do it. There are ways to do it. And the community, your brothers and sisters of Christmas, need your talents and your skills. You've got things that can really help. To it. I come to sometimes get really surprised by how many women in leadership roles in Christmas communities I'm seeing constantly just on Facebook. These women who are hosting groups, who are, just running threads, asking questions. I mean, it's one of the most important leadership things that you can do is just ask people questions about what they're doing and how you can help.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. That's great advice. And, just try, baby steps, and don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to try something new. Don't be afraid to do anything. So awesome example of basic leadership.
I like your idea of you having the vendor come to your meetings too.
Yeah. Yes. We are doing that very regularly now. Yes.
Awesome. So, Bob, is this a good time for the halftime, or shall we do one more?
One more?
Let's do one more. Okay. Thank you so much, Jocelyn, for your face is incredible. Nice picture. You're the Alice in the Brady Bunch picture. So we're going to meet another spectacular face, and that's the face of community service with Cam Breitenbach. And Ms. Cammie Claus found her way when the mayor of her town asked her to help with his special project, Books and Toys for Boys and Girls. She went to the Title I schools with him for the children to get their Christmas gifts. And she shared that a young boy came up and asked if it would be okay to get a book for his brother instead of himself. And that would probably be the only present he would receive on Christmas morning. And many of us have similar examples. And it was at that moment that Cam became Mrs. Claus. Over the years, she has visited many nonprofits and businesses. She's been Mrs. Claus for Denver's Make-A-Wish, an alcohol and drug facility for young mothers and their children to have Mrs. Claus on Christmas Eve. Cam received the Rotary Club of Parker, Colorado, their Impact Award in 2023 for her volunteerism. The Parker Chamber of Commerce presented her with a sash that says, Ms. Parker Chamber. And just recently, for those of you who may have been in Memphis at the International Celebration, she received the Santa's Heart Award for her charitable work in her region. And there's her sash. So we have an incredible face of Mrs. Claus representing community service with Cam Breitenbach. Thank you, Cam, for being a part of this.
Thank you for inviting me.
So,
Okay.
yes. No, go ahead.
Well, community service has just always been a part of my life. I've grown up with it, and I wouldn't do anything else.
So does it go back to your childhood to having this heart of service?
Yes, my dad was he was a volunteer for Boy Scouts and the Red Cross organization. And when I was really probably anywhere between 5 and 8, I can't remember the date, I would go around the neighborhoods and collect money for the Red Cross to help people to be able to get better. And I had my little glass jar and collected coins. And that was going well till I backed up at somebody's house as she answered the door, and I broke her milk bottle and she wouldn't give me a donation. But it didn't stop me. I kept going.
You kept going. So you were, I think it's part of your DNA. Your
Yes, it
DNA
is.
has a heart of service, and so everybody that you touch is better for it. So as you became Mrs. Claus, do you find yourself attracted to events where you could do charitable work as Mrs. Claus? Do you find an event and bring your charitable work to it? Do you do both charitable events as Mrs. Claus, or do you do other things as Cam? How do you divide your personas with your charitable work as Cam and Claus?
When I'm Mrs. Claus, I am totally Mrs. Claus in the outfit and so forth. And my favorite things are to go to assisted living centers or memory care centers. And the thing about the memory care is they remember the red and white, and it brings them back into life there for a little while. And they just like to talk about Christmas and Santa coming to visit. And it's one of the most rewarding things you can do. And at one of the memory cares, there were two women sitting in the hallway. And one of them I got to talking to. We had a nice conversation. And the other lady sitting next to her, I could, out of the corner of my eye, see that she was getting angrier and angrier by the minute. And so I worked my way over to talk to her. And later, the facility told me that that was the first time she had ever spoken since she'd been there. So you make a difference in ways you don't even know you're making a difference. And that's happened several different times. So don't count out the people that have memory issues. You wear that red and white, they don't care if you're Santa, Mrs. or Mrs. Claus. They think you're Santa. And they're so opening and so welcoming. And it's just a great time.
Oh, that's a wonderful memory. So did you have to go through any special training for working with, whether it was with the memory care units or to do the charitable work at different kinds of venues? Do you need special training for that?
No. My mom had dementia and was in a facility, and I know what a visit meant to her. And we found that some places that once they hit dementia, the families would just drop them off. It would never come back. And I just couldn't imagine that happening. So a visit from Santa with a little gift was just really made a difference to the. They may not remember it 10 minutes later, but for that minute, they're right in there with you. And it's just a wonderful thing to do. And it's self-rewarding. You've just done something good for somebody else. And I get paid occasionally, but for the most part, nonprofits, there is no charge. And I go a lot of places. I have a special needs group, and it's the only Rotary Club in the world that is for adults with developmental disabilities. And this Christmas, we're going to be making blankets for the mothers at a rehab center. And I had never done a rehab center before. I have to tell you a little bit of the backup is they called and asked me if I would come. And I said no. It was too far to drive, and it was on Christmas Eve. I just couldn't do it. And I knew I'd be really tired. Well, they called back. Somebody else said, we know it's a long drive, but we really need you here. So I said, okay, I'll come. So I'm grumping around, driving along, and get there. From the minute I walked in the door, I knew this was going to be different. And I have to with this one young lady. She must have been between 18 and 20, and she could not keep her eyes open. They fluttered the whole time, like she was trying to open them and couldn't. And we went on with, I had a Santa with me. It's a Santa I'd never worked with before, and he was so much fun. So as we wrapped up our program with everyone and gave them their gifts and so forth, then this young lady got up and she came over to us. Her eyes were open, and she told us a lot of her story. Unbelievable. So later, I have a friend that works for the facility. He said that was a breaking point in her life, just to get her back into reality and starting to improve. So it's just, you just never know who you're going to touch or what's going to happen. You be nice to everyone. And if they're broken, you just keep going till they're not.
And Cam, I think one of the things that you're making a very strong point about is that as Clauses, we don't go out there with the intention of changing someone's lives, because that becomes about us. But what we do as us touches someone who needs it. And then when what we're doing connects with this person who needs us, and we never know. So thank you for everything that you're doing with that, because you touched so many lives.
This was a fluke, but I want to show you a picture of my truck. It has my granddaughters on the back. I don't know if you can see it. Yes. I take it around. Everybody enjoys that. I'm in parades. But if you're shy about getting going, ladies, call the nursing home. Tell them you're beginning to be a Mrs. Claus, and when would be a good time for you to come and visit with their assisted living patients. They will open their doors for you. They know the difference it makes to have a Christmas character there. Now, another thing I do that not everybody could do is I belong to the Rotary organization, and I write Christmas grants. So this year I talked my club into doing big $180, and then the morning club $180, and then both of those amounts were matched by Rotary's district, and I had $720 to spend. And I bought little 8-inch teddy bears. Got them on Amazon. Who knew they were going to be so popular? So it was something they had that they could hold on to. And of course, they all want a candy cane. So you don't have to be fooled. Just go and visit. And it's good for the facility. The workers have fun. We go to one hospital. We were going to the hospital in my town, but when COVID hit, they quit letting people come in and go door to door. So we still go to Skyridge Hospital, which is a little bit down the road. They call me every year, when are you coming? And I get a lot of that. What will work in your schedule? Whatever works for you will make work for us. And that's just a blessing, and I really, really enjoy it. I encourage you all to go out and volunteer wherever you can. And I did a fundraiser this past weekend, and I'm dressed with my sash on for chamber, even though it's a Rotary event. People would drive by and yell, "Mrs. Claus, Mrs. Claus." So I'm known in the community as Mrs. Claus. So I want to show you, every year I send in my volunteer hours for the Santa Heart Award and never expect to win it. And this year I did. And I'd never seen the award. And I wanted to see if you could see it from here.
Oh,
Very nice.
yes.
It is very nicely done.
Yes, for the Southwest region.
Yes. No, it was for the, let's see, this is the Western region.
Right, for the Western region, yes.
Yeah, it was 6 states. So that was quite the thing. And I keep this at work. I had to drag it home today.
Well, and well deserved. And for those who aren't familiar with that award, it is not about the pat on the back. It is not about self-promotion. It is about promoting the impact to the community and what the Christmas community does to give back. And so it's all about, that heart of service. And so congratulations, Kim. It was so well deserved, and thrilled when your name was announced.
Thank you. And another thing, I do blog to the Rocky Mountain chapter of iBurbs.
Mhm.
And gosh, I think it was 2 years ago. It may have been 3 by now. We had a community in Colorado where 1,000 homes burned to the ground. And we were all watching it on TV. You'd see the one house on fire, and then the next one would be on fire. So we very quickly put together a 501c3, and I'm on the board for the Rocky Mountain Santa's Convoy of Toys. And at a certain time, we partnered with a church that let us bring in a bunch of toys, and the kids would come in and could have any toy they wanted. They were put by age group, but nobody said anything. And it wasn't just, oh, you can only have 1 or 2. You could have what you wanted because you lost everything. Your bed to sleep in, sometimes your pets, everything's gone. So we wanted these kids to have a second Christmas. And that was very rewarding. And we got to sit at times and talk to the parents about how they were getting through. And a couple of things really disturbed me, and always will. That there was one lady whose house, she said, it didn't burn down, but it melted inside, had all the damage, but the house still stood. Well, you couldn't live in it, and the kid was being bullied at school because they still had a house. Well, they did, but they didn't, And another little girl came into my school district. I'm ashamed. And the school she went to, they kept telling her she needed to go back where she came from. And they weren't accepting. I don't understand this in our society today. And we need to be out there doing as many good things and involving as many people as we can. I have several elves. I'm training a couple of Mrs. Clauses. And it's just all good. Everybody is ready to have some fun and some joy.
Oh, Kim, that's amazing. And you're spot on that if there's one life that we touch, and then that person will touch one life, and we have to believe in that greater good. Otherwise, what are we doing? Right? What are we doing this for? So thank you.
I know, one more thing. I know that primarily the kids come to see Santa, but I have a few that at the tree lighting or the parade, their moms will tell me they wanted to know if you were going to be here. They just wanted to see you. So
yes,
that's fun when that happens.
Yes, that is
Thank
fun.
you for having me today.
Oh no, thank you. Thank
you.
You
Get out there in your communities, make a difference.
Make a difference, and you're the shining example of that. So
thank you.
Thank you. Bob Spangle, do you want to do the halftime now, and then we'll come back with Nancy and Natasha?
Sounds
Yes,
good.
that sounds good. Sounds good. Everyone stick around with us. Ladies, stay with us, because at this point we do our halftime break. This is to give Spangle a chance to highlight something that he wants to show us this week. So over to you, Spangle, right after this.
It's okay. I'm good.
It's okay. I'm good. Hey, check it out. We're gonna do something today. We're gonna highlight our beard care products again. We got, you got all these ladies, Santa. Come on now. We want to look our best. So here we go. We got the clean stuff. This is the beard shampoo. We got the good stuff. That's the beard conditioner. You want to look good for these girls. We got the oil. Put this on when you get out of the shower. Put it on. The beard oil is not for your beard. Beard oil is for the hair, skin underneath the beard. We got 4 different balms. We got 1225, which is unscented. We have peppermint sticks. We have Santa's tree, and we have hot cocoa. The hot cocoa, man, I'm telling you, you're gonna want to taste it, but don't. Santa tree is my favorite. But hey, any of these are $25. Tonight's trivia winner will get one too. But also, check this out. We got these in stock now. Beard derma rollers. These are really cool. These stimulate your beard. And it's almost kind of crazy. You can't see it here. But this little roller, when you roll it in your beard, it's actually got little needles in there. I mean, but they're not painful. But them little needles stimulate the skin and the beard. We are going to give you one of these when you place an order through Messenger to me for Santa Beard products. There you go. Tonight's winner will get one of these for trivia winners.
So beard stimulator, that's pretty cool.
It's got needles, man, but it's not painful.
Yeah, when you said that, I kind of chuckled. That's funny stuff right there. All right, so trivia will be coming up next, and that will come right after this. We'll be
You
right
won't
back.
get the used one.
Oh, hello there. Yes, of course, it's me, Santa Claus. Now, you may not believe this, but one of the questions I get asked the most is, well, not how do I do it all in one night? No, but where do I get all my things from? Yes, now, what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about the finest things I have. My glorious gloves, all my knickknacks and trinkets and things. Yes, all the giveaways. Yes, for me to give to the children before the main event. Yes, if I see them in the streets, if they come and see me, I like to have something in my pocket I can treat them with. Yes, and there's one special place where I can find all these magical goods. And that is, of course, StuffForSanta.com. You should head there now and see what magical gifts you can find. Mrs. Claus, have you got my ice pad? Yes, log me on, I'm going to have a look. I shall see you there. StuffForSanta.com. Merry Christmas.
Oh, just trying to look my best there. Sorry. Hey, all right. Tonight's trivia winner is going to get one of these beard derma rollers.
So someone said earlier in the green room, maybe you should
Use that
stimulate your
up
scalp.
here. Might need a bigger one.
For certain. All right, so the trivia
Literally
question,
got a bunch of needles.
trivia question is on the bottom of the screen for you guys to start looking at. And we'll leave it up for just a moment, and then Spangle's going to go ahead and read it. You ready, Spangle?
Right. Yeah, let's do it. Who was the professor and the writer best remembered as the author of the lyrics to the song A blank, T blank, B blank? Written in 1893 and is also known as the author of a blank poem that popularized the Mrs. Claus character. Need the professor's name, song title, year of the poem, and the name of the poem.
A
Wow.
little bit harder. 4 answers. It's not too bad, though. I think most everyone will be able to find this one fairly easy. I know I was reading both of the trivia questions off to Deanna, and I didn't even get halfway through, and she spit the answers out. So,
Hey, well,
See
you
what-
kind of got a big hint up there with the letters.
yes, that's true. Well, I thought I'd make it a little bit easier this week. You know, it's been kind of tough going the last couple of weeks, so we thought we'd make it a little easier on everyone. All right, so Shawn
Look
had
like
to
you
leave.
lost-
She said thank you so much for having her on, and She had to run, so she's dropped out from this point. But now moving on to the second half of our show with the co-host Deanna Golden and all these beautiful ladies. Back to you, Deanna.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Spangle. Thank you, amazing ladies. And so the next face of Mrs. Claus is the face of many faces with Nancy Jean Grey. And Nancy lives in Las Vegas, and she has been a professional entertainer and educator for more than 60 years. Whether it's magic, storytelling, singing, dancing, puppeteering, balloon artist, face painter, and everything in between, Nancy is an award-winning entertainer. She is a performing member of Hollywood's Magic Castle since 1999 and in the Parlor of Prestidigitation since 2000. Her characters include Mrs. Claus, Mother Goose, and a whole passel of other characters. So we're thrilled to have one of the versions of Nancy Jean with us tonight, or several of them. So let's start, Nancy. First of all, when did you start portraying Mrs. Claus?
I started portraying Mrs. Claus in, about 1981, 82. And I got asked by the local recreation department for an event. And at first I was helping Santas go out. In fact, I'd actually been Santa before I was Mrs. Claus, because I used to have a company, and when my Santa didn't show up, but the job had to be filled. So I put on the beard and the outfit, and I was Santa at a very famous golf club. And I also used to go to nursery schools, and I'd do my show, and then I'd go in the bathroom, put Santa on, come out and do that, finish up the part of the visit. I've been primarily a solo Mrs. Claus for all these years, but Mrs. Claus was not my first Christmas character. My very first Christmas character was a singing doll at a breakfast with Santa back in the early 1970s. So I'm old.
No, what was that breakfast with Santa like? What did you do as a singing doll?
I did strolling, and I had a big key. I had a cute little dress. Back in those days, I could wear stuff like that. And I would sing Christmas songs, and move like a mechanical doll.
Oh, how funny. I'm sure that you were a hit.
I'm sure you were a hit. A fun gig.
Good thing there was no cell phone videos, right?
There were no cell phone videos then.
Would like to see something like that today.
Exactly.
Oh, that's phenomenal. So you've been an entertainer for over 60 years. So, and you mentioned about the doll being your first character. How many different characters do you have in your repertoire?
A lot. I mean, and if I don't have one and the need arises, I created another. For instance, last year I had somebody request for a bearded lady to do strolling magic, and I created a beard, and I was the bearded lady for strolling magic. And of course, that was not a children's event, but for Carnival. And I previously portrayed bearded ladies at Universal Studio and on a television show. So it was not new for me. So only this time I had to do it with a gray beard. Back when I did those other characters, I still had brunette hair. But besides doing just telling stories at the character of Mrs. Claus, I incorporate my ventriloquism and puppetry in with my character. And I used to do, before I was Mrs. Claus, I used to do puppet shows at Breakfast with Santas in Miami. So back in the days when all the department stores had Breakfast with Santas, they're now quite rare. Mm-hmm. Just like department stores are becoming quite rare. Thank you, big places like Amazon. So.
Yes. Well, with all those different characters, and I had the pleasure of visiting Nancy at her home. a little over a year ago in Las Vegas, and you have a lot of outfits for your
Yes, I
different characters.
and
Are you able to cross between?
yes, oh, very easily. It's just well, I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the University of Wisconsin Milwaukee, so I am an educated actress, and also a SAG and AFTRA member. In fact, I was Mrs. Claus on a couple of television shows when I was in LA years ago. So Mother Goose was sort of my first character that I toured schools with, and I did an entire show as Mother Goose. The early childhood intervention program in Miami, Florida, asked me to create the Mother Goose program, and the other program I did for them was Introduction to Clowning, because a lot of children were afraid of clowns. So I did that show as well, where I'd go in when regular clothes and put on clown makeup and a clown costume, and then do a basic show for them.
What a great way to get past the fear.
But let me tell you, the people that hired me did not know 3-year-olds. They had me do a full hour show for 3-year-olds. And I did it. But at that point in time, I kept everything. Every segment was really short and really fast and really intense. And then I'd have them in stage various times where they would get up and have movement, so they would, be able to sit through that long a period of time. The teachers used to say, "Why so long?" I said, "That's because that's what your people who paid for the program have asked for."
Yes, and you're right. The attention span. Know your audience, right? Know your audience.
Exactly. I've also been an elf when the elf was required. I've also taught a couple Mrs. Clauses. We have, during Jingle Ring, they needed some black Mrs. Clauses, so I trained one of my friends who was one of the professional singers that had been on the Las Vegas Strip, and she became a very good Mrs. Claus. So.
Okay, see, there's that teaching and that leadership again, that it's just prevalent in the most unexpected ways.
Exactly. So for my Mother Goose is a good transition. A good transition for non-Christmas time. In fact, I do so many different shows. I am doing in June and July. I've so far booked 29 different shows that I'm doing in that period of time.
You're busy. All as the same character or different characters?
Oh, I've got one show for Mother Goose. I'm doing another one as my Safari Sue character, where I tell safari tales and do magic. And then I've got another show on reading for them. I've got another show on safety. There's a bunch of shows.
Nice. So there's you as well as many other Clauses. We know that Clauses do clowning. They do a puppetry with or without ventriloquism. They do the Easter Bunny. They do, other characters throughout the year, not just a Claus at Christmas time. And so how do you go about separating those personalities when you step into a different character? Because I would think that the Easter Bunny has a different character than Mrs. Claus does, or different than an elf. So how do you keep that separated?
When I did the Easter Bunny, I guess I did at some early point in time where the full costume. I created Granny Bunny, who was bunny makeup. I had a headpiece that was fur, so you couldn't see my ears. I had a big picture hat with ears, and I created that character because I found a lot of kids are very intimidated by large costumed characters. I've had, back when I used to do those for birthday parties, I've had kids scream in terror because they weren't told ahead of time that there was going to be a large costume character.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I created the Granny Bunny character so that it would be more friendly for children. And also used it not just at Easter time. I used it in the springtime to tell bunny tales. Besides Mrs. Claus, I also did Sparkle Spirit of America, who tells patriotic stories. I sing patriotic songs. I have an Uncle Sam puppet. I have a star puppet. I have a little girl puppet who does God Bless America. I even did it in Texas for a church ceremony service.
Mm-hmm. A little bit of everything. And so okay. A lot of us, we step in and we're Clauses, and that's all we are. And then some people come in from another background and become, Mrs. Claus or Santa after doing other characters. So you might be sparking interest in someone out there who hasn't thought about maybe doing another character, but now is like, maybe I could do this. Share some words of wisdom about someone who might want to try a different character or exploring that. What do they do? Where do they start?
If you don't have a lot of money for a costume, go to your thrift store and get pieces of costuming. I have a number of Santa outfits that I totally upcycled from the thrift store. They always have giant skirts, long skirts available at thrift stores. So it's a really good way to start different characters. There's also ways to mix and match your different pieces of costume. I would suggest, if you're doing another character, do not put her in red. Red does not help with concentration. That is a psychologically not the best color for kids to concentrate with. So I would suggest having softer colors, blues, greens, purples. They are much more for in gender focus. I would also say start with a puppet. And if you cannot be a ventriloquist, it's okay. If you look at the puppet and as you move it and focus on that, the kids will believe the puppet's talking, whether or not your mouth is moving. But you've got to believe.
What was the name of the puppet? Waylon and,
Madam.
the guy. Yes. And Madam, he spoke right to Madam.
Yeah,
and
he never ever pretended to be a ventriloquist. He told himself a puppeteer. I was fortunate enough to see him at a puppetry festival many, many years ago. He has unfortunately, passed on. And he was an amazing puppeteer. I mean, he was really good at movement. He was very funny. He was also very raunchy. So he was not what we call PG, but he was really good. I was able to see him even as an opening act for Melissa Manchester.
Oh, fun.
When I did my puppet, I usually had my puppet talking to me, like he would say something to my ear, and then I would repeat it out to the children. So I wasn't trying to do ventriloquism.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's one way, but it's everybody already has 9 voices. You already have a high voice, a medium voice, and a low voice in your own way of speaking. Now, if you speed that voice up, you then change it and you've got 3 more voices. If you slow it down, you've got more voices, thinking high, medium, and low tones. So you already have different voices. And so if you don't give every puppet the same voice, give them character just as you give yourself character for your portrayal.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Nancy. I'm excited to learn more about that. And we are going to move into our final face, and that is the face of business with Natasha Spencer Coley. And we can start by saying, hi there. When Mrs. Claus leaves the North Pole, she is Natasha Spencer Coley, a Florida-based chef influencer, cooking, crafting, and sharing great food with thousands of her followers. While traveling, she uses her platform to spotlight locally owned businesses, and she combines her background in STEM training, youth program development, performance, and culinary arts to create magical experiences throughout the year. She's also passionate about community building and providing affordable housing options to families and the elderly. You can find this Mrs. Claus on your favorite social media platforms and at appearances throughout the country and even at magical celebrations in the happiest place on earth. So, Natasha, when did you become Mrs. Claus?
Well, first, thanks for having me. I will say that I did not become Mrs. Claus until later in life. I was born a Miss Claus. I have always had a love for holiday and holiday celebrations. Christmas has always been my favorite time of year, from the family traditions, the feasts that were always laid out, traditional baking. Oh my goodness. And all of the opportunities to give back. So I grew up giving gifts, doing small gestures and things like that. But I didn't get the Mrs. title until I got married later in life.
Well, that's fantastic. So you run a business,
Yes.
and so tell us before you tell us about the business itself. Did your Mrs. Claus lead you to the business, or did the business lead you to Mrs. Claus?
They happened simultaneously. So the business, it came about on sheer happenstance. I've always had, like I said, a love for cooking. I bake desserts. I used to do custom wedding cakes and things of that nature. And as I was working in my, I would say, my nonprofit days, I was working a 9 to 5. One of the teenagers, I did a activity that challenged them to step outside of their box. And in turn, they got to challenge me, which, can be a little scary for those of us who are adulting to have teenagers challenge you. But their challenge was, if you say this is who you are going to be, you need to get on social media and let people really see you. They felt like I was hiding. And so that challenge led to me doing cooking and crafting and all sorts of things and sharing my love of the holidays on my social media platforms. And that became what you see today.
So that has become Coley Manor?
So Coley Manor, fun fact, I don't know if you can tell because of the sparkle, but I am a bit of a nerd. And so when I purchased my first house, I was very selective about who came to my home. Also, I have a love for sports cars, and I still have my first sports car, which is a midnight blue Corvette that I used to call the Batmobile. So as you can imagine, I parked the Batmobile at the Bat Cave. So then once I got married and we got this house, then this became Coley Manor as opposed to the Bat Cave. So it's our version of Wayne Manor.
Of Wayne Manor.
Absolutely.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. So, and if you ever move again, you're gonna have to rename your home.
Indeed.
So what you have the business? How did you go about starting a business?
Well, it was an interesting transition from doing the thing that you love for the people that you love, which is cooking and crafting, a bit of personal shopping, customized projects, to really making sure that you have all of your ducks in a row, your elves in place, so to speak, to be able to transition to an effective business. But once I took that challenge on, I set about getting the correct paperwork, forming an LLC, getting my accounting team together, because that was key to make sure I was fully in compliance. Of course, there are those things that when you take what you love and give it to the public, you need coverage, like, wait for it, insurance, background checks, all of the paperwork and muckety muck that people don't like to talk about, but really protects us when we're doing the business. So it was a matter of sitting down and figuring out what I wanted to share, and then coming up with a plan of how to share it in such a way that it could generate income and generate profits to support a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. It's not easy. There's a lot of fine details when you're creating and managing a business, that you don't think it's not just the the fun side and the LLC. But yeah, there's a lot of support out there as well. And knowing that there are causes out there who have their own businesses kind of opens the door to, can I pick your brain about how to go about this, how to go about that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So, so one of the questions that was asked is like, why do you think Mrs. Claus is letting herself be seen more now?
Well, I think Mrs. Claus has always been behind the scenes. So getting stuff done, managing the goings on at the North Pole, but Santa has always had the better PR. So making sure now that, and it goes along with the lines of being what you can't see. So you have to put yourself out there for the next generations of little girls who love holidays, who love Christmas, who tinker with toys and invent things and feel more comfortable fixing a sleigh than sitting beside someone. So for me, it's about showcasing to all the little girls in the world that Mrs. Claus is more than just a sidekick. So I think it's very important that the person who embodies merriment and jolly and showcases what love feels like is showcased out in the front.
Is showcased out, and having a supportive Santa / husband / partner is a big key to that. So how do you and your husband approach the team, and do you do solo events, or is everything that you do as a partnership, and how do you go about presenting yourself as the ultimate role model of a successful and loving marriage?
Well, I don't know about the ultimate role model, but we do try our best to be open and communicative. And most of all, we have a lot of fun. So, fun fact, my Santa does not do solo performances. We only have one client that he does solo performances for. And that's because they haven't quite found a place for Mrs. Claus yet. Mrs. Claus does several solo appearances. STEM, the science of Christmas activities with kids, having conversations with Mrs. Claus, with teenagers, baking events, tea, things like that. Mrs. Claus appears on her own. Santa typically does not.
Does okay. And then the business that you have, Christmas with the Coleys.
Yes.
Can you tell everybody how that came to be and what exactly it is and how you manage that business?
Well, we are Christmas performers. We are trained, fully bonded in background. We took care of all of the business stuff. So when we are out in the public, we can bring the jolly. We bring joy with us. So companies and private parties and families can book us to come in and spend time with their families fully and create a very robust Christmas experience, whether it's in the kitchen and baking cookies or opening presents or snapping photos and singing songs. What you get when you get the Christmas with the Coleys experience is the Santa and Mrs. Claus that you imagine, but then you get to connect to them fully year round through our social medias and get that peek behind the curtain of what life is really like, either at the North Pole or when we're traveling the world to do our merriment checks throughout the year.
Fantastic. So yeah, you are. I just lost my. You do create that experience for the children. It's magical. It truly is.
Thank you.
So you were also recently in Memphis.
Yes.
And you were part of the ISC, the International Santa Celebration. How was that experience for you?
Oh, it was so exciting. So I got a chance to be in Memphis, not only as a participant, but as a presenter. So I taught a class on using social media to help market and building the basics of your social media presence. And then, of course, the area that is truly dear to me is expanding our diversity in our Christmas performing world. So I was able to teach 2 classes that were very well received at the International Santa Celebration. It was a blast.
Fantastic. And I'm sure you're going to get a a lot more offers to present your material, because I heard the applause out in the hallway at the end of it, and a line of people, talking to you and just kind of picking your brain. So yeah, I think, and Shawn spoke to this at North Pole in this past February, and you touched on it as well, is that the importance of managing our business as Clauses and understanding the social media and how to use it and who's looking at it and how they're using it. We've got, we're very comfortable with Facebook, and there's so many more platforms. So how do you get past the concerns of safety and security with all these different up and coming social media platforms to use as a tool to manage a business?
So, from my perspective, I think that you are your first line of defense in the safety and security of your brand. I tend not to join platforms that don't align with the Christmas spirit, that don't keep the Claus standards. One of the things that people are most surprised about social media is the algorithm. What you see on your social media feeds is what you interact with the most. So a lot of it is self-managing the things that you interact with. Because if you're interacting with things that don't align with who you are or who you want to be, then they won't come up in your feed or be associated with you.
Yes. That's why what you just searched on becomes the next ad on social media that pops up for you.
That's it exactly.
How did they know? It's kind of spooky. So thank you, Natasha. That was a phenomenal example of clauses in business. Fantastic faces. So as we kind of close this, I'd like to open up kind of a roundtable, question for each of the ladies to answer, and then we'll send it back to Bob and Spangle. So let me start with Jocelyn.
Okay.
Your favorite cookie?
My favorite cookie. Oh, it's not one I cook. The one I go specifically to get is from a local lunch and bakery shop, deli, and it is a macadamia nut and toffee bits. It's very gooey toffee bits. It is absolutely to die for. Now, my favorite cookie to bake, which I do at holidays, is also Santa's favorite grown-up cookie for we do a huge caroling party. And it is I call it a Bourbon Street bar. It is a bar cookie, which has a shortbread crust, a pecan pie topping with the chocolate bits, and is flavored with just a couple of tablespoons of whiskey. And so that's both of our favorites. It's like the best bourbon pecan pie you've ever had, but you can just make a small piece because it's a cookie bar. It's not a whole piece of pie.
That's okay. Just the way you described it, my mouth is watering, and my address.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So, Cammie, what do you have a favorite song or story that you love to talk about?
I turn on the radio station that on November 31st, they put on Christmas music. I love all Christmas music, and I have it on as often as possible in my car, at home, everywhere.
There's a radio station in Phoenix that starts playing Christmas music around Halloween.
Oh, good.
And goes to Christmas Day.
So, get that channel.
Yeah, KEZ 99.9.
Yes.
The radio. I have to interject. I entertain my neighborhood in late summer when I'm really trying to refresh all of my Christmas carols for singing. So I'm out in my backyard every afternoon, running through about 15 Christmas carols at a time, entertaining my neighbors.
Love it. Well, you have Hallmark movies playing inside. So, Nancy.
Yes.
Tell us one secret about Santa that nobody knows.
Well, the hard thing is I'm a solo Mrs. Claus, so I work with many, many, many different Santas. And one was very, very surprised. She said, "Boy, you interact well." I said, "That's because the secret is actually with me, is I know how to improvise no matter what Santa has to say."
Oh, perfect.
And the other secret is Santa is nothing without Mrs. Claus.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a secret that's not becoming such a secret so much anymore.
One thing that happened during the because of the pandemic, there was a shortage of Santas in Las Vegas. So I did some Christmas Eve visits as Mrs. Claus, and a number of the people had me back again.
Fantastic. Making more
And
memories.
For diversity, I had a Santa get sick for in a visit this year, and their replacement was a black Santa, and the kids did not care one iota.
Yeah.
No,
Santa is Santa.
It's hard. Yeah, it's the heart. That's exactly right. And so thank you for sharing that. And Natasha, the final question for you is, what is your least favorite Christmas trend?
My least favorite Christmas trend, I think, would have to be the photos and the experience that terrify children. It's one I would love to see go away. It's already a bit overwhelming for kids when they meet the big guy in the red suit and it's very robust voice. So we try to modulate and make sure the child is having a calm experience first. But the thing that burns my cookies is when people intentionally try to jump scare kids with a Grinch character or hand over a crying child and rush them just to get that satirical picture. Mrs. C would love to see those things go away.
I'm with you on that. The crying baby picture is one thing, and I'm also a solo and independent Mrs. Claus, and one of the Santas I work with will not do the crying baby and he'll tell the parents, "I will not traumatize this child. You can bring them back when they're calm, or let Mrs. Claus work, with them or spend time with them." But because the parents or the aunts and the uncles and the grandparents, it's okay, let them be screaming, and it's just anyway. So
can I share with you our secret to how we sort of pivot that?
Absolutely.
And so one of the things that we do, and we have a client that is well known for their customer service and their magic making, and it's a high volume situation. But one of the things that we do is get the parent and the kid off to the side. And once they calm down, we will have the parents chatting and taking pictures from the front where we're behind, standing at a distance, shushing or making faces. So that way they get that traditional Claus experience picture as a memory, but the child doesn't have to be traumatized. And we're very serious about that too.
That's a great principle to stand by, because it's about the experience, it's about the memory, it's about the picture on the mantle or on whatever digital media that they're doing. So I want to send it back to Bob and to Spangle, and we're going to open it up for any questions or comments from the audience. But this has been amazing for me to sit and listen to, and just have a chat with you fabulous women. It's fantastic.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, Deanna.
Oh no, thank you to Bob. This is a conversation that Bob and I had for quite a while, and about there's so many different aspects and lenses of the ladies, and it's so far beyond Mrs. Claus. It's so far beyond portraying an elf. It's so far beyond managing the schedule. It's so far beyond the expected role that we have, and we're putting our red boots out, and it's the welcome of the Christmas community is just phenomenal. So hats off to all of you, and I'll put it back to Bob and to Spangle.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been great. Let's go to our viewers and see if they have any questions or comments that we can have you all answer while you're here.
That's right. If you got any, put them up in the comment box now. Now, Angela does not have control of the starred feature tonight. So
I do have some, but comments quit coming through from Facebook.
okay. So I marked a few and she's got a few here. Let me go ahead and grab some of these that she has already marked. Ken Kringle says, I nominate Natasha to be on the Holiday Baking Championship on the Food Network to represent our community. Great idea, Ken. I love that idea. Mark Rector says, love me some Natasha. Tanya Hampton says, hello, inspirational Mrs. C's. Mark Rector comes back with this. This whole group is spectacular. Wow. Deborah Shepard Kaiser says, lots of representation for Mrs. Claus's. Mark Rector says, love Jocelyn's clock.
You might have to explain that clock, Jossie.
This well, and I helped him build it, but this is Santa Bob Bulick's clock, and the big hand, the tall hand, actually counts down the days to Christmas, but the shorthand are the months of the year. So you notice now we are in late May, but the minute hand does not start until the actual days of December, and then we count down the days of December until the sleigh ride.
That is stunning.
Very nice. Very nice.
And the best secret about this, that whole back wall is a Murphy bed. It comes apart. So my grandkids were on it this weekend, spending the weekend.
Christmas magic.
Yes.
Love it. Certainly do. All right. So moving along, Carol.
Yeah, they don't have a garage. They've got a wood shop.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. And for those who don't know, Bob makes Santa chairs. He makes all kinds of stuff. He is a woodworker. So
yes.
Carol Sherman says, hello, amazing ladies. Tanya Hampton says, hello, inspirational Mrs. Claus's again. I think she put that up earlier, or I read it twice. Joyce Fields says, if you're not a Mrs. Claus, but you need to assist your Santa, do you need to get a background check?
Well, background checks are always good.
Yeah.
I'd say in this day and age, that's really important for people to feel secure, because unfortunately there are people that entertain children who should not be, that have ulterior motives.
Yep.
I would say background check at the least, but also there are performer options for insurance. Yes. Where if you're not going to be the performer, you're considered an assistant.
Yeah.
And so you'd be on the rider and have any kind of protections. And some of our vendors actually require that.
Yeah.
Yes. I always send out those certificates.
Can
Yep.
you start reading
Okay, producer talking to me here. Sorry. Tanya Hampson says, we are currently working through a plan for food truck and Santa. Natasha, you totally inspired me.
I love it. And listen, wherever your food truck is, let me know. And maybe I'll come visit and do a social media promo for you.
I'm hoping that she brings it to San Antonio in February.
Tanya and Randall was in San Antonio back in February of this year for our classes down there, and she was talking about this food truck and stuff. And she's actually, if you go over to her Facebook page, she's got recipes that she's been trying to perfect. She's from England, Great Britain, so she's got some stuff that looks phenomenal. So it's going to be a pretty cool food truck when they get it done.
I can't wait to see it.
Which comment would you want me to go to, Nancy?
Saying wonderful information and knowledge from all of the ladies. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing that, so it must be further down my page.
And then AJ says, wow, mind blown, amazing show.
Can you guys hear Angela?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Mark Rector says, well done tonight to all. Bravo. Larry Davis says, Natasha, I agree because I don't like it when the parents hand me a child that is crying and scared. I will not do this when a child is scared of me.
Good point.
Um,
Tanya Hanson says this has been super informative. Patrick Moss, who was also in San Antonio with us back at North Pole Cornerstone, says this was great. Thanks, ladies. AJ says amazing, amazing show, ladies.
Okay, there's another one from Mark Rector for Natasha. What time is dinner tomorrow night? I have
Meatloaf at 7 p.m.
I'll tell you what, you may have a front yard full of cars when you wake up in the morning. People may be driving in from all across the country.
That's Holy Manor.
Jenny Lynn on there. You want to get Jenny Lynn's?
Jenny Lynn says, I have so enjoyed this presentation this evening. Good stuff, ladies.
One from Rex.
Rex Ray says, ladies, this has been fabulous. I firmly believe that Mrs. Claus is a vital part of any Christmas performance. I agree, Brother Rex. Santa Scott Saratine in Oklahoma City says, would love to visit and learn from Natasha. Tanya follows up and says she loves the clock even more now.
Eileen Myers.
Eileen Myers says fabulous, amazing Mrs. Clauses. Jenny Kringle says, thank you, ladies, for sharing. You are all amazing and such inspirational or inspiring, excuse me.
Inspirations. And
AJ Spangle. AJ says to Spangle, can we get Natasha as a headliner for School of Santas next year? Very informative and would love to hear what she has to say.
Uh-oh.
Hey, he's going to become your hiring agent. I am working on it like mad. Tanya says, talking about her food truck. Scott Becker says, great show tonight, ladies. Deanna, please say hi to Lenny for me.
They're talking to you. You want to pop in and say hi?
Nope.
Nope. He said no.
We heard you.
Cam.
Over and say, stick your head in here.
Hello.
There's
Mitchell, Mitchell Allen is with us. He says, a great show. Everyone knows Mitch.
All right, Bob, you got some trivia?
So Jenny Lynn says, Josie, please share that cookie recipe on your Facebook feed. Talking to Jocelyn. Tanya Hampson says, we are currently working through a plan for food truck in San. Okay, that one I had already read. I know what happened. I pinned those, so they're popping back up at the bottom. All right, I think that's all of them at this point. Now, real quick, before we move on, we don't have a winner for the second trivia question. Several people's got portions of it, but they don't have everything that we need there. Who had the...
What? They're in timeout.
Yes, we did have a winner, but they're in timeout. I actually had two, and they're both in timeout, right?
Well,
Ladies,
you know what, Bob?
What?
We will tell the people, the first person that sends me a message on Facebook, who are our entertainers for Thursday night at the school will win.
There you go. If you've been paying attention from week to week, Spangle has talked about it. He's got it out there on the Facebook group also. For
first person that tells me who the two entertainers are for Thursday night's show.
Okay, and while you work on that, I'm going to go ahead and reveal the trivia answer for the first question, which was the schoolofsantas.com. That's good for putting your name in the hat for the scholarship for the 2024 School of Santas in Branson. Next week will be the drawing, by the way. What year was the Christmas legend published with the first ever mention of Santa's wife to appear in print? That was 1849. and it was part of a collection of 29 short stories written by Philadelphia missionary named James Reese. Winner?
Mark Rector.
Mark Rector. Mark's name goes into the hat for the drawing. Now, have you got a winner for the second one yet?
No, we don't. AJ said the magician and Terry Wayne Sanders, but that's not the right answer.
Jay's trying hard. Hey, he put about a dozen different. He was throwing everything in there for the trivia tonight, trying to get the right answer.
And real quick, there's one more comment on there for YouTube. From Ken Kringle. Can you see that one? I absolutely love events when Mrs. Claus joins me. It's never the same without her. She is an invaluable part of our team. So I tip my hat to each and every one of you wonderful ladies.
Hope everyone heard that.
Yeah.
That was from Ken Kringle. Fantastic.
Okay.
Okay, Spank, we're waiting for a winner.
Well, that's all right. They can get a hold of me later, and we'll figure it out and everything. Scott's messaging me, but he knows the answer, so he doesn't count.
Yeah, that's cheating. He can't do that. All right, ladies. Thank you so much. We want you to stick around just a few more minutes. If you would like, stay with us, and we'll go back into the green room and chat for just a moment before we let you go. We always do that after the show, kind of a debriefing, you might say. All right, Spangle. What's your closing thoughts for this week, my friend?
My closing thoughts are: I got the keys in my hand. Bob, I'll be there in 7 hours. We're going to Natasha's for meatloaf.
And Jocelyn's bringing dessert.
There you go. Gotta have Jocelyn cookies. So come on down and grab Bob and head on down to Florida.
It'd take a little bit longer than a day.
Bob and I are supposed to go to Florida in August.
Yeah, we're still working on that. We'll have to see. That will be, and I mentioned back in the green room, I think it was in the green room. It's been a long show and I don't remember, but me and my wife will be married 50 years in August, and we honeymooned in Florida. So we were going to try to go back this year and celebrate our 50th in Florida. And Spangle and Jetta wanted to come along. Said, you don't have to hang out with us. We just want to come. Okay. All right, ladies, thank you so much. It's been a great show. Spangle, how about you? What do you think?
Hey, man, tonight was a blast. We had a good time. We had a good crowd. We had great questions, comments, answers. Everything was awesome. And we didn't have to do a whole lot of talking, Bob. I didn't get lost once.
Well, I stumbled in the beginning. We were kind of frazzled trying to get started, and I know I messed the whole opening up, but that's okay. Hey, I'm me. Popeye says, I am what I am.
You're Popeye the Sailor Man.
That's it. Okay, so before we go, everyone's probably going to wonder what the answer to the second trivia was. We're going to go ahead and give it, even though we didn't have a winner. Who was the professor and writer best remembered as the author of the lyrics to the song America the Beautiful is what we were looking for there, written in 1893, and is also known as the author of a poem that popularized the Mrs. Claus character. We needed a professor's name, which was Kathleen Lee Bates. Of course, the song was America the Beautiful. It was written in 1889, and the name of the poem was Goody Santa Claus on a Sleigh Ride. So there you have that. Everybody had everything except for the last part there, and that was the part they didn't have. Back over to you, Spangle.
All right, join us next week for our next Tuesday Night Live episode, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. And don't forget to catch those guys at 3 o'clock Central Time, Monday, the Bob and Randall Show. You guys, they're going to talk about a whole lot about nothing, but you're going to find out all kinds of stuff. Yeah, prelim to the Tuesday show.
And
Tuesday, on Tuesday Night Live is on the Tuesday Night Live Show Facebook page or Tuesday Night Live 1225.
That's correct. And next week's guest on Tuesday Night Live will be Megan Price, Gig Salad. Everybody wants to join in for that, especially if you're looking for a seasonal job or beyond that.
Yeah, they want people to work all year long.
Yes, that's right. That's correct. They don't just hire Santa and Mrs. Claus, they hire for all occasions.
Mhm.
Okay, big thank you to schoolofsantas.com, supersanta.com, holidayphotomagic.com, thermapparel.com, sapbobs, fancylace.com, northpolecornerstones.com, santanana.com, nationwidesantas.com, and Santa's Magical Fellowship Group. Thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone. Tell everyone good night, Spangle.
Good night, Spangle.
Remember to join us for our next Tuesday Night Live each week, 7 p.m., same Claus time, same Claus channel. Count your blessings, not your sorrows. May your troubles be small and your blessings be large. Have a blessed week. On behalf of the whole TNL production crew, I'm Santa Bob McMaster saying good night. Remember, always let your Claus heart shine bright. Never stop learning. And we hope to see you right back here next Tuesday night. And hey, join us on Monday. We have fun over at 3 p.m. Good night, all. Happy closing.